In 1937, with the previous Asashio class under construction, Japan started its next class of destroyer. These were the 19 ships of the 2,033-ton Kagero class. For the most part, these ships were near repeats of the Asashios. There were three main but important differences. None were visually striking. First, still spooked by the thought of their ships rolling over and no longer limited by treaty, they were slightly wider. This is a good thing. Second, they had new, more powerful boilers. Not world-changing or anything, but it did mean that despite being heavier and wider than the previous class, they did gain 1 knot on the top end. Third, the reloads for the forward torpedo mount was moved from straddling the rear funnel to straddling the forward funnel. At the start of the war, December 7th, these were Japan's newest and best destroyers. Kagero was started September 3rd, 1937, and completed November 6, 1939. Shiranui was started August 30th, 1937, and completed December 20th, 1939. Kuroshio was started August 31st, 1937, and completed January 27th, 1940. Oyoshio was started March 29th, 1937, and completed August 20th, 1940. Hayashio was started June 30th, 1938, and completed August 31st, 1940. Natsushio was started December 9th, 1937, and completed August 31st, 1940. Hatsuzaki was started December 3rd, 1937, and completed February 15th, 1940. Yukikaze was started August 2nd, 1938, and completed January 20th, 1940. Amatsukaze was started February 14th, 1939, and completed October 26th, 1940. Tokitsusaki was started February 20th, 1939, and completed December 15th, 1940. Urikaze was started April 11th, 1939, and completed December 15th, 1940. Isokaze was started November 25th, 1938, and completed November 30th, 1939. Hamikaze was started November 20th, 1939, and completed June 30th, 1941. Tanikaze was started October 18th, 1939, and completed April 25th, 1941. Nowaki was started November 1st, 1939, and completed April 28th, 1941. Arashi was started May 4th, 1939, and completed January 27th, 1941. Hagikaze was started May 23rd, 1938, and completed March 31st, 1941. Mayakaze was started April 27th, 1940, and completed July 25th, 1941. Akagumo was started July 2nd, 1940, and completed September 27th, 1941. Main armament was 6 127mm 50 caliber guns in 3 twin turrets, 1 forward and 2 at the stern. These guns were capable of 55-degree elevation. Torpedo armament was 2 armored quad mounts, one between the funnels and one behind the rear funnel for the 610mm Type 93 long-lance torpedo, both on the center line, allowing firing off either beam, and both at the main deck level. Reloads were carried. The reloads for the forward mount straddled the forward funnel with 2 boxes on either side. The reloads for the aft mount was built into the rear superstructure. 16 depth charges were carried, and they had Type 93 sonar. Propulsion was provided by 3 boilers, 2 venting to the forward funnel and 1 venting to the aft funnel. These provided steam to the 2 turbines, which produced 52,000 horsepower, each driving one of the 2 propellers. This gave them a maximum speed of 35 knots. They had 1 rudder. In late August through September 1943, Yukikaze, Hamikaze, and Shiranui replaced Turret 2 for more medium anti-aircraft and had Types 22 and 13 radar fitted. depth charge load was increased to 36. In mid-December 1943, Miyakaze, Yurikaze, Isokaze, Nowaki, Akagumo, and Tanakaze replaced Turret 2 for more medium anti-aircraft, had Type 22 and 13 radars fitted. Depth charge capacity was raised to 36. Kagero escorted the Pearl Harbor raid. In late January 1942, she covered the invasion of Rabaul. In early April, she took part in the Indian Ocean raid. At the Battle of Midway, she escorted the invasion force. At the Battle of the Eastern Solomons, she escorted the troop transports that the battle was a cover for. She also took part in the Battle of Santa Cruz. At the Naval Battle of Guadalcanal, she escorted the troop convoy. At the end of November, she took part in the Battle of Tassafarunga. On the morning of May 8, 1943, while leaving Kolombangara, she wandered into a minefield and was mortally wounded. An airstrike later that day finished her off. Kuroshio started the war as part of the Philippines invasion force, afterward moving on into the Eastern Indies. Next, she escorted the troop transports at the Battle of Midway. At the battles of Eastern Solomons and Santa Cruz, she escorted the carriers. At the Naval Battle of Guadalcanal, she initially escorted the transport, but rushed ahead to join the night when the second battle started, but to no effect. At the end of November, she took part in the Battle of Tassafarunga. On the morning of May 8, 1943, while leaving Kolombangara, she wandered into a minefield and was sunk. Oyoshio started the war as part of the Philippines invasion force, afterward moving on into the eastern East Indies. Next, she escorted the troop transports at the Battle of Midway. At the battles of Eastern Solomons and Santa Cruz, she escorted the carriers. At the Naval Battle of Guadalcanal, she initially escorted the transport, but rushed ahead to join the fight when the second battle started, but to no effect. At the end of November, she took part in the Battle of Tassafarunga. On the morning of May 8, 1943, while leaving Kolombangara, she wandered into a minefield and was sunk. Hatsukaze started the war as part of the Philippine invasion force, afterward moving on into the East Indies, where she took part in the Battle of the Java Sea. Next, she escorted the troop transports at the Battle of Midway. At the Battle of Eastern Solomons and Santa Cruz, she escorted the carriers, returning with them to Japan afterwards. Returning to the Solomons at the start of January 1943, she was badly damaged by a PT torpedo on January 10th during a Tokyo Express that sent her back to Japan for repairs. Back in the Solomons at the start of September 1943, she took part in the November 2nd Battle of Empress Augusta Bay. There she collided with the cruiser Miyoko, which ripped her bow off. In the pre-dawn hours, she was sunk by American destroyers. Natsushio started the war as part of the Philippines invasion force, afterward moving on into the East Indies. While covering the invasion of Makassar on February 9, 1942, she was torpedoed and sunk by S-37. Yukikaze started the war as part of the Philippines invasion force, afterward moving on into the East Indies. In late February, she took part in the Battle of the Java Sea. At the Battle of Midway, she escorted the invasion force. Next, she took part in the Battle of Santa Cruz. In mid-November, she took part in the First Naval Battle of Guadalcanal, where she was damaged. With repairs completed at the start of 1943, she took part in the early March 1943 Battle of the Bismarck Sea. In mid-July 1943, she took part in the Battle of Kolombangara. At the Battle of the Philippine Sea, she escorted the tankers. At the Battle of Leyte Gulf, she was assigned to center force. With fuel and air cover all but gone, she escorted Yamato on her final sortie. Surviving the war, she was handed over to the Chinese and was finally scrapped in the 1970s, which has got to be a record lifespan for an IJN ship. Hayashio started the war supporting the Philippine invasion. At the Battle of Midway, she escorted the troop transports. Next, she took part in the battles of the Eastern Solomons and Santa Cruz. During the Naval Battle of Guadalcanal, she escorted the troop transports. On the evening of November 24, 1942, while escorting a convoy near Salamayu, she was attacked and mortally wounded by bombers. Mayakaze started the war with the Philippine invasion force. She then escorted the carriers at the battles of the Java Sea, Midway, Eastern Solomons, and Santa Cruz. While covering the early February 1943 Guadalcanal evacuation, she was damaged by aircraft, sending her back to Japan for repairs that would last until late July 1943. On February 17, 1944, as part of the American raid on Truk, she was sunk by American cruisers. Isokaze escorted the carriers from the start of the war up to the Battle of Midway. At the Battle of the Eastern Solomons, she escorted the troop transports. Next, she was back to escorting the carriers at the Battle of Santa Cruz. Next, she took part in the August 17th, 18th, 1943 overnight Battle of Horonoi. This was followed by the October 6th, 7th Battle of Vella Lavella. At the Battle of the Philippines, she escorted the carriers, and at the Battle of Leyte Gulf was with center force. She was sunk April 7, 1945, while escorting Yamato. Shiranui escorted the carriers through the Indian Ocean raid. At the Battle of Midway, she escorted the troop transports. On July 5, 1942, while escorting troops near Kiska, she was torpedoed and badly damaged by the submarine Growler. Repairs would last until November 1943, nearly a year and a quarter, after which she would be sent back north. At the Battle of Leyte Gulf, she was part of the 5th Fleet's follow-up force at the Battle of Surigao Strait. 2 days later, on the 27th, she was sunk near Panay by carrier aircraft. Amatsukaze started the war as part of the Philippine invasion force. At the end of February 1942, she took part in the Battle of the Java Sea. She escorted the troop transports at the Battle of Midway. In both the Battle of the Eastern Solomons and the Battle of Santa Cruz, she escorted the carriers. On November 12th, 13th, 1942, she was part of the first naval battle of Guadalcanal, where she was damaged, sending her back to Japan for repairs until mid-February 1943. On January 16, 1944, near the Spratlys, she was hit by the submarine Redfin and had her bow blown off. She was adrift for 6 days before being found and towed to Singapore. Repairs would last until mid-March 1945. While escorting a convoy near Amoy on April 6, 1945, she was bombed, run aground, and abandoned. Tokitsukaze started the war covering the Philippines invasion. At the end of February 1942, she took part in the Battle of the Java Sea. She escorted the troop transports at the Battle of Midway. In both the battles of the Eastern Solomons and the Battle of Santa Cruz, she escorted the carriers, returning to Japan afterward with them. At the beginning of January 1943, she returned to the Solomons area and was sunk at the start of March 1943 at the Battle of the Bismarck Sea. Yurikaze started the war escorting Kido Butai, including the detour to Wake, through the Battle of Midway. She again covered the carriers at the Battle of Santa Cruz. After surviving the February 1943 evacuation of Guadalcanal, among others, she again escorted the carriers at the Battle of the Philippine Sea and was with center force at the Battle of Leyte Gulf, returning to the East Indies afterward. While escorting the battleships back to Japan on November 21, 1944, near Formosa, she caught a torpedo from the submarine Sea Lion, blew up, and sank. Hamikaze started the war escorting Kido Butai through the Battle of Midway. She again covered the carriers at the Battle of Santa Cruz. After the February 1943 evacuation of Guadalcanal, she was one of the transports at the Battle of Kula Gulf, took part in the Battle of Kalimbangura, and took part in the Battle of Horonoi. Next, she escorted the carriers at the Battle of the Philippine Sea. At the Battle of Leyte Gulf, she rescued survivors in the Sibuyan Sea and took them to Manila, so missed Samar. She also went down April 7, 1945, while escorting Yamato under a swarm of carrier aircraft. Nowaki started the war covering the invasion of Malaya and the Philippines. Next, she escorted the carriers at the Battle of Midway. the Eastern Solomons, and Santa Cruz. During a Tokyo Express run on December 7, 1942, she was damaged by aircraft bad enough to send her back to Japan for repairs until August 1943. At the Battle of the Philippine Sea, she again escorted the carriers. At the Battle of Leyte Gulf, she was part of Center Force and was sunk October 26th while rescuing survivors of the Battle of Samar. Arashi started the war covering the invasion of Malaya and the Philippines. Next, she escorted the carriers at the Battle of Midway. In fact, she was the one that unintentionally led Enterprise's dive bombers to Kido Butai. So, good job. Next, she escorted the carriers at Santa Cruz and with them returned to Japan afterwards. At the beginning of December 1942, she returned to the Solomons and was sunk at the August 6th-7th, 1943 Battle of Velak Gulf. Hagakazi started the war covering the invasion of Malaya and the Philippines. In mid-February 1942, she hooked up with the carriers and escorted them through the Indian Ocean raid and the Battle of Midway. On August 19, 1942, while unloading a Tokyo Express, she was heavily damaged in an airstrike. With repairs completed in February 1943, she headed back to the Solomons and was also sunk August 6th-7th, 1943, Battle of Velak Gulf. Tanikaze escorted Kido Butai, including the side trip to Wake, through the Battle of Midway. Next, she escorted the carriers at the Battle of Santa Cruz. At the start of February 1943, she was part of the Guadalcanal evacuation force. At the start of July 1943, she was part of the Battle of Kula Gulf. Near Tawi-Tawi, on June 9, 1944, she was sunk by the submarine Harder. Akagumo escorted Kido Butai at Pearl Harbor, the Solomons invasion, the Indian Ocean raid, Midway, the Eastern Solomons, and at Santa Cruz. At the start of October 1943, she took part in the Battle of Velak Gulf. Near the Philippines, on April 11, 1944, she was sunk by the submarine Redfin.